On the day of the wedding, I swapped souls with Vivienne's sworn enemy. When I opened my eyes, Vivienne's body was covered in hickeys. Don't leave so many marks next time. My husband finds out, he'll kill you. My heart shattered. I told her who I really was, my voice trembling. Vivienne froze. Then she leaned in and kissed me with a smile. Right. You're my husband. A little husband is still a husband. Be a good boy and rest up. I've got a wedding to get to. I'll come back tonight and take care of you. At the $1 million wedding that had been planned for me, she declared her love for someone else in front of everyone. Then she covered the microphone and whispered, Ethan, for these 7 days, you are my husband in the eyes of the world. Rage burned through me. I stormed the stage wearing Marcus's face. I, Marcus Cole, am Vivienne's side piece. 1. The entire hall erupted. A flash of panic crossed Vivienne's eyes. She composed herself quickly, her brow furrowing. You've always loved picking fights with me. Spreading lies, hurting people. You'll do whatever it takes. I've let it go before, but today is my wedding day. Don't push me. Everyone in the city knew Marcus Cole and Vivienne were enemies. Born rivals. If I hadn't lived it myself, I never would have known these two had already been sleeping together. Malicious whispers cut into my ears. I let out a cold laugh. You have 3 hickeys on your left chest. Fresh ones. I dropped the bombshell and dared her to take off her dress and prove me wrong. Vivienne knew my personality better than anyone. This wasn't going to end quietly. She grabbed my wrist and warned me not to make it worse. She'd explain everything later. But I didn't want her explanation. I reached out and tore at her wedding dress. The gown, the lining, all of it ripped open. 3 fresh hickeys on her left chest, plain as day. The room exploded. Did Vivienne really cheat? And with Marcus Cole, the man responsible for her family's deaths? Impossible. When Dylan was kidnapped, Vivienne threw everything she had into saving him. She said she'd give her life for his. Nobody in this city would believe she stopped loving Dylan. Vivienne's eyes went red. She stared at me, silently begging me to back down. I shook her off and opened my mouth to keep going. But Marcus, wearing my face, cut me off with a sharp cry. Enough. I left those marks. How would you even know that? Did you put cameras in our bedroom? What are you after? He twisted the whole thing around, making it look like I was the one targeting Vivienne. I was furious. I almost blurted out the whole soul swap situation right then. But Vivienne shot me a look. Her friend group immediately swarmed me and dragged me into a corner of the venue. They took turns trying to talk me down. Ethan, didn't you promise Vivienne you'd behave today? She even promised you 3 months alone with her. You two have been tangled up for 10 years. You're definitely the only husband she has in her heart. I stood there frozen. I couldn't even breathe. 10 years? She and I, Ethan Walsh, have only been together 7 years. The heartbreak curdled into rage. Vivienne's friends started talking over each other, piecing together the history. It started with Vivienne and Marcus running away together on New Year's Eve when they were teenagers. Then their vow at the top of the Pinnacle Tower. Then the expedition they'd survived together on a mountain climb. Clinging to life, clinging to each other. The whole wedding became a backdrop. No, the wedding belonged to them too. Before they ran out of things to say, they told me about the day before Vivienne met me. Her parents had been invited on a trip by Marcus's family. A landslide. No survivors. If that hadn't happened, Ethan, you and Vivienne would have gotten married with your family's blessings a long time ago. And Vivienne doesn't hate you. She just loves you in a way that hurts her. 2. I sat there and listened to the whole epic love story between my wife and her affair partner. Then I let out a quiet, hollow laugh. I pressed my palm until the pain cut through, forcing myself to stay sharp. I hit record. Start over from the beginning. Tell me exactly how much Vivienne loves Marcus. Her friends didn't notice anything was off. They just figured their boy Ethan had snapped. They talked until the sky went dark. Walking out of the venue, I had one thought left in my head. I'm done with her. But I'm getting my body back. I tucked the recorder into my pocket and kicked open the door to the bridal suite. Vivienne was waiting. Exhaustion was written all over her face. I figured out what happened. Marcus used your family heirloom, the bloodstone, to swap your souls without telling anyone. That bloodstone. I'd retrieved it from the family vault myself to keep her safe. The only person I'd ever told about its power was her. Vivienne paused, then continued. I've already talked to him. Don't be angry. You'll swap back in 7 days. As for the affair, she never offered a single word of explanation. I looked at her in silence and pressed play. The color drained from Vivienne's face as the recording played. Her knuckles turned white. Her eyes went red. When she spoke, the words came out unsteady. Ethan, that was the past. I only love you now. If I didn't love you, why would I have chosen to marry you instead of Marcus? I found it funny. I actually laughed. Vivienne took that as a good sign and let out a breath of relief. She even lightened up, pushing her luck. Because of what happened to my parents, I blamed Marcus for years. He went through a lot because of me. This feels like a chance to make it right. Think of the wedding night as something I owe him. It's still your body, so just pretend it didn't happen. Don't let it bother you. She kept talking like I wasn't even there. I looked at her, flat and cold, and said exactly one thing. Why should my dignity pay for your mistakes? Vivienne looked annoyed. She pulled out the old line about being one unit, husband and wife. Then she gave me a disappointed look and said I was being unsympathetic. I didn't bother arguing. Give me back the bloodstone and my body, and sign the divorce papers while you're at it. You're the one at fault. Walk away with nothing. Lucky that Marcus hadn't gone public with the soul swap. Otherwise I never could have gotten Vivienne's friends to hand me evidence of her affair on a silver platter. Vivienne's eyes narrowed. She snapped at me for being reckless. Forcing the swap back early will hurt both bodies. You can't give Marcus even 7 days? And Ethan, don't joke about divorce. That would really hurt me. I wouldn't budge. That pushed Vivienne to her limit. She held herself back from lashing out at me. Marcus, though, couldn't stand it anymore. He burst out of the room and came at me. You've always used the fact that Vivienne loves you as a weapon. You hurt her whenever you want. You don't deserve her. There are plenty of people who would. Vivienne looked genuinely moved. She turned away from me. She was upset now. The whole thing was absurd. I crossed my arms and looked Marcus up and down. You two deserve each other. She's a liar, you're worse. No wonder you found each other. I don't hold back with words. Never have. Even if Marcus wanted to take a swing at me, I wasn't afraid. But the hand he raised never came down on my face. Vivienne caught his wrist and pulled him into her arms. Marcus, I know you're angry for me. And you're right. Ethan has always taken me for granted. 3. Her eyes, sharp and clear, found mine. There was a cruelty in them that left no room for argument. Actually, I don't need your permission to do anything. Ethan, you married me. You need to learn what it means to be my husband. You can't keep acting like a child. A chill ran through me. I stepped back and grabbed the door handle. But she yanked me by the arm and dragged me into the darkened bridal suite. Vivienne locked the door. No light. Just her voice. When Marcus and I are done, I'll let you out. The bridal suite was Vivienne's design. That room had always been locked. Her ultimate secret. I hit the floor hard. Scraped my palm. I pushed myself up through the pane. Moonlight fell across the walls, and the color drained from my face. Every wall was covered in photos of Marcus. Portraits. Couple shots. Intimate photos. Every single one had a date written underneath. My birthday. Our anniversary. The night we got engaged. Even the day I first visited her parents' graves as her husband. Blinding fury and disgust crashed over me. I started tearing the photos off the walls. And the whole time, Marcus's breathless voice drifted through the walls. Vivienne, I'm yours. I'll always be yours. Vivienne moaned his name back. Then mine. Back and forth. The moment I remembered that was my body, I bent over and dry heaved. When I straightened up, my face was blank. I flicked the lighter. The room caught fast. Everything was flammable. The fire spread before I could think. Thick smoke tore through my lungs. I coughed until my chest felt like it was splitting. I smashed the window. I was halfway out when Vivienne crashed through the flames. Ethan. She smothered the fire, then wrapped her arms around me in the charred room and held on tight. Are you out of your mind? You nearly gave me a heart attack. She must have smelled the smoke and come running. Her clothes were still half undone. Not even the smoke covered the smell on her. I shoved her away. Before I could say anything, she grabbed my arm. You burned yourself? Do you know how much Marcus cares about his skin? Just because it's not your body, you think you can trash it? That's a twisted way to get back at someone. Vivienne's expression went cold. She forced me to the hospital to get skin grafts done on Marcus's body. I fought her the whole way. It didn't matter. I stood there helpless while Marcus used my body to sign the consent forms. Eyes shining with tears, he clutched Vivienne's sleeve. Vivienne, I'm worried there are other injuries he's hiding. Vivienne understood immediately and ordered a full examination. The works. I told them through gritted teeth that nothing was wrong. They pushed me into the exam room anyway. The doctor came back with results. The patient's eyes were exposed to intense smoke and heat. The corneas have been damaged. Vision has significantly deteriorated. Marcus sobbed into Vivienne's arms. I knew he was hiding something. Is he trying to make me go blind for the rest of my life once we swap back? Vivienne shot me a withering glare. Then she turned back to Marcus and spoke gently. Don't worry. We'll have him sign a cornea donation form. After the swap, we'll do the surgery, same time as the skin grafts. My eyes went wide. There's nothing wrong with my eyes right now. Marcus had bribed the doctor. He wanted my eyes. I needed to prove I could see. I read out every word in sight, one after another. Vivienne hesitated. Marcus's expression flickered. Then he put on a wounded look and started whimpering. You could see when you came in. You probably just memorized everything then. Fury surged through me. I laughed ice cold. So you want to be blind that badly? Fine. I'll make it happen. I raised my hand and drove it straight toward my own eyes. 4. Marcus stared at me in disbelief, stunned that I'd actually snapped. Vivienne's pupils contracted. She lunged and grabbed my wrist. Her face had gone pale. She growled at me under her breath. What are you doing? Do you have any idea how much it hurts to poke your own eye? Is it really worth destroying yourself like this? I looked at her, genuinely confused. It's just pain. What's the big deal? They thought the swap wouldn't happen for 7 days. But that was outdated information. The bloodstone could only hold the connection for 3 days. In 3 days, I'd be back in my own body, and I'd catch them completely off guard and leave. Nobody would be able to force skin grafts or cornea donations on me after that. Vivienne didn't know any of this. She swallowed her anger. Stop making a scene. You caused the damage, you deal with the consequences. She called the doctor over and had the cornea donation form brought in, all business. Marcus signed 2 names on it, and shot me a satisfied look. I said nothing. Let him sign. If he signed and I wasn't around to collect, what was the point? Vivienne softened her voice. Ethan, don't be scared. Even if you can't see, I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. You don't have to be afraid. Just rest for these 7 days. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Guilt had made her generous. Vivienne offered me 3 requests. On the first day, I asked for the bloodstone back. Marcus hemmed and hawed and refused to hand it over. After I pushed him hard enough, he admitted he'd sold it. That same day I ransacked his place and listed everything he owned for sale online, including his used clothes. On the second day, I asked for a divorce. Transfer the bridal suite to my name. I'm selling it. I wasn't in my own body yet, so pushing a clean split was difficult. I just needed her signature on the divorce papers first. Vivienne's face went cold. She pressed her lips together. Under pressure from Marcus, she nodded. On the third day, I asked for 7 years' worth of dividends back. A divorce fund. Something to fall back on. Vivienne had no objections. Marcus did. He shot me a resentful glare. Finance only recognizes Ethan's face. Come with me. The window for the swap was closing. I couldn't tip my hand early. I figured he wouldn't try anything, so I got in the car. I was wrong. Halfway there, everything went sideways. Several black SUVs came out of nowhere and rammed us. Marcus screamed in terror. I clenched my jaw and hit the emergency contact button on the phone. The next second, the phone was ripped away. My hands were tied. By the time Vivienne arrived, Marcus and I were both barely conscious on the concrete floor. Ethan. Marcus. I forced my eyes open. Fury simmered in my chest. Marcus, you idiot. Your emergency contact wasn't 911. It was Vivienne. The kidnappers grabbed us both by the hair and grinned. Ms. Vivienne, Mr. Reed needs a transplant. Both of your men are a match. Out of respect for you, he only needs one. Your choice. Who lives? My mind was running fast, calculating every angle. Marcus was sobbing. Vivienne, save me. Please save me. Vivienne's face was a wreck. Her fists were clenched so tight the veins stood out. She tried to speak several times. I choose. The kidnappers ran out of patience. They raised a solid steel pipe, aiming at both of our heads. Right before it came down, Vivienne raised her hand and pointed. Him. I choose him. Ethan Walsh's body. Marcus Cole's soul. I was about to die. I was smiling. 3, 2, 1. The countdown didn't end with a sound. It ended with a violent, bone-chilling tremor that started deep inside the marrow of my left ring finger. The finger, where the bloodstone's residual connection still pulsed like a dying coal. A sudden, terrifying pressure gripped my chest, pulling my consciousness backward through a dark, suffocating tunnel. The physical sensations of Marcus's weak, scarred body, the stinging of his burnt shoulders, the blurred, watery vision of his damaged corneas, vanished in a single, silent snap. My eyes flew open. The weight of my own chest, the broad strength of my own shoulders, and the sharp, crystal-clear focus of my own eyes rushed back to me all at once. I was sitting on the cold concrete floor, my hands tied behind my back, but the physical cage was mine again. I was Ethan Walsh. Directly across from me, the heavy steel pipe swung by the kidnapper came down, with a sickening wet crack. Crack. It didn't hit my body. It struck Marcus's physical shoulder, the steel crushing his collarbone and sending his body spinning into the dirt. A blood-curdling scream of pure, unadulterated agony ripped through the warehouse. It was Marcus's voice, but this time the soul inside it was his own. The frantic, high-pitched wail of a man who had never known physical pain, who had spent his life hiding behind his family's wealth and Vivienne's protection, echoed off the metal rafters. Marcus. Vivienne let out a dry, ragged gasp of horror. She took a step toward my physical body, the one she had just pointed to, the one she had chosen to save, but her feet froze when she looked into my eyes. The frantic, weak, and manipulative look that Marcus had worn while using my face was completely gone. In its place was the quiet, flat, and absolute coldness of Ethan Walsh. "Ethan?" she whispered, her hands shaking so violently she dropped her leather purse, the gold-embossed invitations for our wedding banquet spilling out into the pool of Marcus's blood on the floor. "Yes, Vivienne," I said, my voice quiet, steady, and carrying the calm weight of a man who had just returned from the dead. "It's me." "No, no, no, no," Marcus whimpered from the floor, his left hand clutching his shattered shoulder, his face pale as paper. "Vivienne. The swap. Reversed. It's me. I'm Marcus. He's back in his own body." Vivienne's head snapped toward him, her pupils contracting to pinpricks as the reality of her choice settled into her bones. She had stood in front of the executioners and pointed her finger, choosing to let Marcus's body be mutilated or killed to save Ethan's body. She had thought she was saving her husband, or perhaps she had wanted to save Marcus's soul and my wealth. But the universe had a way of balancing the books. By choosing to let Marcus's body die, she had unknowingly condemned the actual Marcus Cole to the steel pipe, while saving the husband she had systematically betrayed for 7 years. "Your choice has been made, Ms. Vivienne," the lead kidnapper said, his face expressionless as he raised the steel pipe once more, aiming it directly at Marcus's head. "The donor is waiting." Before the pipe could fall, the heavy iron doors of the warehouse were blown off their hinges with a deafening metallic crash. The police raid did not take 5 minutes. It took 30 seconds. The tactical division of the municipal police, whom I had quietly tipped off, using Dixon's private security network before we left the office, swept into the warehouse with suppressed rifles, clearing the corners with lethal, silent precision. The kidnappers didn't even have time to raise their weapons before they were slammed onto the concrete floor, their hands cuffed behind their backs. "Don Ethan," Captain Vance, the chief of security for my family's holdings, said, stepping forward and cutting the ropes around my wrists with a small silver pocket knife. "The medical team is waiting outside. Are you injured?" "I'm fine, Vance," I said, rubbing the red marks on my wrists. I stood up, my tall, healthy figure casting a long shadow over the 2 people kneeling on the floor. I didn't look at Vivienne, who was throwing herself onto Marcus's bleeding body, her white wedding dress stained with his blood and the grease of the warehouse floor. I walked to the altar table where my leather folder was lying, picked it up and tucked it under my arm. "The hospital," I said to Vance. "Get the medical team to prepare the private room. But only for me." "Ethan, please." Vivienne screamed from the floor, her hands covered in Marcus's blood as she looked up at me, her eyes wide with a desperate, frantic terror. "Marcus is dying. His shoulder, his collarbone is crushed. He needs the private specialists from your family's clinic." "The private specialists," I said, my voice cold as ice, "answer to the Walsh Group, Vivienne. And as of 9 this morning, the Walsh Group has formally severed all credit and medical guarantees for the Cole family." I looked down at Marcus, who was shivering against her shoulder, his face waxen, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps. And as for the cornea donation form he signed using my name while he was in my body, I pulled the signed document from my folder and threw the pieces onto his chest. "A forged signature on a medical consent form is a Class 1 felony, Marcus. The district attorney's office has already received the filing. If you survive the shoulder surgery, you will spend the next 5 years of your life in a state-run medical prison." "Ethan, don't do this," Vivienne sobbed, her hand clutching my coat hem as I walked past her. I chose you. I pointed to your body. I wanted you to live." "You pointed to my body, Vivienne," I said, not turning back to look at her, "because you thought Marcus's soul was inside it. You wanted him to inherit my wealth while I died in his skin." I stepped out of the warehouse, the cold, rainy air of New York hitting my face, as the sirens of the approaching police cruisers wailed through the dark night, leaving her kneeling in the ruins of the love story she had built on my blood. The next morning, the financial and social circles of New York were in a state of absolute, unmitigated chaos. The Wall Street Journal ran a front-page headline that sent shockwaves through the corporate elite. "The sham wedding of the year. How Vivienne Walsh used her husband's marital fortune to fund her affair with her family's sworn enemy." The article contained a detailed timeline of the affair, backed by the audio recording I had secured from her friends, the financial ledgers of the 7 years of dividends she had transferred to Marcus's shell companies, and the police report from the warehouse kidnapping. The Walsh Group's board of directors held an emergency meeting, formally terminating the joint shipping alliance with Vivienne's family's firm, the Shaw Group. Without our credit guarantees, the Shaw Group stock fell 40%. In 3 hours, their trading license suspended by the SEC pending an audit into their marital trust manipulation. Sasha Shaw, Vivienne's stepmother, and a woman who had spent years treating me like a convenient accessory, sat in her empty penthouse, her face pale as she looked at the foreclosure notices being pinned to her door by the municipal marshals. But the final devastating blow came in the private recovery wing of the Municipal Hospital. Vivienne sat in the corridor, her white wedding dress still stained with dirt, her hair messy, her eyes red-rimmed and bloodshot. She had spent 24 hours sitting on the metal bench, waiting for the results of Marcus's surgery. The door to the operating room opened, and Dr. Oliver, the chief orthopedic surgeon, walked out. How is he? Vivienne gasped, standing up and grabbing his sleeve. Can you save his shoulder? We've stabilized the bone, Ms. Vivienne, Oliver said, his voice flat. But because the steel pipe crushed the joint capsule, and because the surgery was delayed by 3 hours due to the federal asset freeze on his medical insurance. He paused, a cold, clinical look behind his glasses. He will never have full motor function in his left arm again. It is permanently paralyzed. And because of the cornea damage he suffered during the fire in the bridal suite. The cornea damage? Vivienne's voice rose in a panic. But he said the vision would recover. It would have, Oliver said, if he had undergone the transplant yesterday. But since the consent form he forged was declared legally void, and since no other donor could be found in time under his frozen accounts, his left eye is now permanently blind. Vivienne fell back onto the metal bench, her face completely blank, her eyes. Why does she realize that the man she had loved, the man she had sacrificed her husband's life and dignity for, was now a crippled, half-blind debtor who would spend the rest of his life in a prison ward? The office of Grant and Associates was located on the 45th floor of the sapphire glass tower overlooking the harbor. I stood at the massive glass window, looking down at the city. My hand now, fully healed, was completely bare of any jewelry, the silver wedding band lying in the wastebasket of my old villa. The bridal suite has been sold, Mr. Walsh, Mr. Grant said, sliding a document across the table. A commercial developer purchased the property for $12 million. They're scheduled to demolish the building next month to make way for a new office tower. Good, I said, not turning back. And the 7 years of dividends? We recovered $65 million from Marcus Cole's offshore accounts in the Bahamas, Grant said, a dry, humored smile on his lips. Under the terms of the marital dissolution, the entire sum has been legally returned to your personal trust as compensation for fiduciary negligence. The door to the office was pushed open without a knock. Vivienne stood in the doorway. She was no longer wearing the white wedding dress. She wore an old, wrinkled trench coat, her hair tied back in a messy knot, her face pale and entirely devoid of makeup. She looked like a ghost of the beautiful, powerful queen who had stood on the stage 3 days ago. In her hand, she carried the bloodstone, the pale white jade pendant that had once been the heirloom of my family. Ethan, she whispered, her voice raspy and broken as she took a slow, trembling step toward my desk. I brought it back. I found the buyer. I paid him $3 million to get it back for you. Please, just let me explain. I turned slowly to face her. I didn't look at the bloodstone, and I didn't look at her tears. I looked at her eyes, and saw only the desperate, empty panic of a woman who had realized too late that she had thrown away her only shield. The bloodstone, I said, my voice completely calm, completely empty, belongs to the Walsh Group's private archive now. Vivienne, Mr. Grant has already filed the formal reclamation order. You paid $3 million of your own money to buy back an asset you don't even own. Ethan, please, she shrieked, falling to her knees on the polished floor, her hands clutching my boots. I love you. I've always loved you. The affair with Marcus, it was just a sickness. I hated his family for what they did to my parents. I wanted to punish him. I wanted him to suffer. You wanted him to suffer, I said. By sleeping with him on my anniversary? By writing his name on the walls of your private suite? By telling him you would make me blind so he could have my eyes? I reached down, my fingers gently but firmly pulling my boot free from her grip. You didn't hate him, Vivienne. You loved him. You loved the tragedy of your twisted love-hate dynamic because it made you feel like the main character of an epic romance. I walked toward the door, my high heels quiet against the floor. But to me, you were just a bad script. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton was filled with New York's most prominent financial and political figures. It was the formal presentation of the Walsh Group's new global shipping alliance. The night Ethan Walsh was officially introduced to the world as the sole managing director of the Eastern Ports. I stood at the top of the grand marble staircase, wearing a bespoke, dark blue tuxedo that caught the light of the crystal chandeliers. My posture was straight, my chin raised, and the tired, hesitant look of the husband who didn't work was completely gone, replaced by the quiet, terrifying elegance of a sovereign. Beside me stood Captain Vance, his hand resting comfortably on his holster. Don Ethan, Vance said, his voice quiet. The board has finalized the acquisition of the Shaw Group's remaining shipping lines. The entire eastern seaboard is under our control now. Excellent, I said, taking a sip of my champagne. I looked down at the crowd of billionaires and directors. In a dark corner near the service entrance of the ballroom, a woman stood, leaning against a marble pillar. She was wearing an old, faded coat, her hands red and chapped, her face thin and covered in the deep, permanent lines of a woman who spent her days working double shifts at a local laundromat to pay for her family's legal debts. Vivienne. She had been standing in that corner for 3 hours, not daring to approach, not daring to speak, her hand clutching a small, crumpled piece of paper, the design sketches of the bridal suite we had drawn 7 years ago. She wanted to show them to me, to remind me of the family we had been. I stopped in front of her. The entire ballroom went silent, the guests watching the new sovereign of the Eastern Port stand before a common beggar. I looked at the crumpled paper in her hand, then at her pale, sweat-slicked face. Don't bring your trash into my hall, boy, I said, using Marcus's old arrogant line to dismiss her. The garbage belongs in the alley. I turned my back on her, my dark coat sweeping over the marble floor as I walked back to the center of the room, my hand taking my grandfather's as the music began to play. The draft was over. The bloodstone was home. And as the doors of my new empire opened to the bright, warm morning, I knew that the shadow of Marcus Cole was finally completely gone, and I was finally, beautifully home.